I'm too young to handle this. The 19-year-old giant male order bride sobbed to the 70-year-old raw Leela Starling never thought her life would change so quickly. She was only 19, and until yesterday, her biggest problem had been figuring out how to fix the cafeteria coffee machine on her space station. She had dreamed of adventure, of seeing the stars up close, of working with strange alien technology. But she had not dreamed it would come all at once, knocking on her door before she was ready. The message arrived early in the morning, blinking in red on her small, cluttered communicator. She squinted at it, thinking it must be a mistake. Leela Starling, by order of the Interstellar Council, you are hereby summoned to serve as liaison ambassador for the Ravax negotiations. Immediate departure required. Leela dropped her half-empty mug of cold coffee. It shattered against the metal floor, sending tiny pieces skittering across the room. Her cat, Nimbus, a tiny orange creature with more curiosity than brains, twitched its tail and meowed. Leela stared at the message again, hoping her tired eyes were playing tricks. Too young, she muttered aloud. I am way too young to handle this. But the message was clear, and the tone left no room for argument. She had 24 hours to pack and leave for the Ravax homeworld, a planet she had only read about in textbooks. The Ravax were a species unlike any human had met before. They lived for 70 standard years, were incredibly intelligent, and their technology was so advanced it sometimes felt like magic. They were calm, logical, and often dismissive of humans, viewing them as impulsive, emotional, and unpredictable. The idea of negotiating with them made Leela's stomach twist in knots. She had barely managed the budget for her small engineering internship, and now she was expected to handle interstellar diplomacy. And yet, as much as she wanted to run away, a spark of excitement flickered inside her. This was what she had always wanted, adventure, real adventure. The next few hours were a whirlwind. She packed the essentials, her multi-tool, a notebook filled with sketches and ideas, and a small hollow communicator. She tucked Nimbus into a portable habitat, which he seemed to appreciate about as much as he appreciated her cooking attempts. She said goodbye to her friends, who were still too shocked to say anything more than, Leela, are you serious? By the time she reached the launch bay, her nerves had settled into a strange, jittery excitement. The shuttle waiting for her was sleek and silver, humming softly as it floated above the platform. A human officer, mid-30s and looking like he had survived more crises than Leela could count, greeted her. Starling, he said, scanning a small screen, you're cleared for departure. The Ravax expect you within the next solar cycle. Don't mess this up. Leela swallowed hard, nodded, and stepped inside. The shuttle's doors closed with a soft hiss, and the engines roared to life. The ground fell away, and the stars opened up before her. She felt a mixture of fear and wonder, the thrill of the unknown mingling with the weight of responsibility. The journey was long, and Leela spent most of it reading the briefing files. The Ravax, she learned, were suspicious of humans. In the past, their interactions had often ended in misunderstandings, because humans acted unpredictably, while the Ravax valued careful, measured logic. Leela had been chosen not because she was experienced, but because humans had a unique quality the Ravax could not predict: creativity, adaptability, and emotional intelligence. The shuttle finally descended through the swirling blue and purple atmosphere of the Ravax homeworld. The planet was breathtaking. Mountains glowed with bioluminescent crystals, rivers shimmered with colors she could not name, and the sky was filled with floating islands that defied gravity. Leela pressed her face to the window, forgetting her fear for a moment. The landing was smooth, almost eerily quiet, and the hatch opened to reveal a figure standing tall and calm. Rathun, the Ravax representative, was exactly as described in the files. 70 years old by human standards, tall, imposing, with skin that shimmered like metal under the planet's sunlight. His eyes, deep and thoughtful, studied her carefully. You are Leela Starling, he said in a voice that was soft but carried authority. You are young, too young perhaps to handle what you will face here. Leela's mouth went dry. She had rehearsed greetings in her head, but they seemed to evaporate under the weight of his gaze. She managed a small, nervous nod. I'll do my best, she said. Rathun's eyes seemed to assess her entire being in an instant. Then, without another word, he turned and began walking. Leela followed, careful not to stumble. The halls of the Ravax Council building were unlike anything she had seen. Smooth surfaces reflected light in strange patterns, and floating platforms moved silently through the air. Other Ravaks passed by, glancing at her with mild curiosity. Some whispered to each other, their voices like soft music in Leela's ears. Her first meeting with the council was a disaster. She had been instructed to present a simple greeting hologram, welcoming the Ravaks to a new human initiative. But in her nervousness, she accidentally activated a holographic message meant for Nimbus, which displayed a looping video of her cat chasing a laser pointer while wearing a tiny wizard hat. The council members blinked silently. Rathan's eyes narrowed slightly, though his face remained calm. Leela's cheeks burned. I'm sorry," she stammered. "That was meant for personal communication." A long silence followed. Then Rathan spoke, his tone almost amused. "Humans are unpredictable. We have heard this, but now we see it." Leela bit her lip, unsure if he was scolding her or acknowledging her mistake. Either way, it was clear she had made a memorable first impression. Over the next few days, Leela's routine became a whirlwind of meetings, tour, and endless briefings. She learned the Ravaks language, which was based on subtle tones and gestures, studied their customs, and tried to memorize the complex rules of their society. Every mistake she made seemed magnified by her youth. She dropped a hollow tablet once, accidentally revealing a secret map of the Ravaks defense network. She apologized profusely, but Rathan simply shook his head. "You are young," he said again, "but youth is not weakness. It is energy, perspective, potential. You may yet teach us something we do not know." Leela clung to that thought, repeating it like a mantra whenever she felt overwhelmed. She was too young, yes, but maybe that was the very reason she could succeed. Her confidence grew slowly, in small victories. She learned how to navigate the floating platforms, how to interact respectfully with council members, and how to anticipate the Ravaks' logical deductions. She found that when she relied on her instincts rather than overthinking, she often succeeded in ways that even seasoned diplomats could not. One evening, as the twin suns set over the crystalline mountains, Leela stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The air was filled with soft hums of energy and the glow of distant lights. She felt a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had made mistakes, yes, but she had survived. She had also made the Ravaks pause and consider the value of humans, not just as impulsive creatures, but as beings capable of unexpected solutions. Rathan joined her silently, standing beside her. He did not speak at first, merely observing the horizon. Finally, he said, "You are still too young to understand everything that will happen, Leela Starling, but you have courage, you have creativity, you are human. That is enough for now." Leela smiled, feeling the weight of her responsibility, but also a spark of hope. She did not know what the future held or what challenges awaited her, but she knew one thing. Being human, even young and inexperienced, gave her a chance to make a difference. And somehow that was enough. The night deepened, stars shining brightly over the floating city, and Leela felt that for the first time she truly belonged, not just among humans, but in a galaxy that was far bigger, stranger, and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The next morning, Leela awoke to the soft hum of the city outside her window. Light from the twin suns spilled into the room, casting colors she had no names for across the floor. She stretched and tried to shake off the lingering nerves from her first days with the Ravaks Council. She had survived the accidental hologram incident, the awkward greetings, and the countless new rules. Somehow, she had even managed to make a few small successes, mostly by relying on her instincts and ideas no one else had considered. Still, she knew the real challenges were only beginning. The council had informed her that today, she would accompany Rathan to visit the council chambers of the Ravaks, where negotiations would take place. The chamber was a place of immense power and importance, and humans were rarely allowed inside. As she followed Rathan through the glowing corridors, she tried to remember everything she had learned so far. She watched the floating platforms, moved carefully along the paths, and nodded politely to every Ravaks they passed. Some stared openly at her, clearly curious about this tiny human in a world designed for giants with long lifespans. Others whispered to each other in the soft tonal language of their kind. Leela had been warned that the Ravaks measured competence in subtle ways. A gesture too fast, a tone too high, even a misplaced step could be interpreted as disrespect or lack of intelligence. She walked cautiously, trying not to breathe too loudly. The council chambers were massive, far larger than anything Leela had imagined. The ceiling floated impossibly above them, filled with intricate patterns of glowing light that shifted as one moved. Platforms floated silently across the chamber, and holographic maps of the galaxy rotated slowly at the center. Leela's eyes widened. "You must focus," Rathan said quietly beside her. "The council will judge every movement, every choice. Humans are unpredictable. That is why you are here, but do not make us regret it." Leela swallowed and nodded, trying to summon her courage. She reminded herself of what he had said yesterday. Her youth, her creativity, her human unpredictability could be an advantage. It was hard to feel like an advantage when she felt so small in a chamber full of towering aliens, but she held onto the thought anyway. The council members were already seated when they arrived. Each was at least twice her height, with eyes that seemed to look right through her. They spoke softly to one another, their language melodic and layered. Rathan stepped forward and introduced her with care. "This human," he said, "is young. She may not understand all that will happen, but she has qualities that are uniquely hers. Observe her work." Leela felt a shiver run down her spine. All eyes turned toward her. She straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The first task was simple on paper, but terrifying in practice. The council wanted her to solve a puzzle, a test of logic that had confused many Ravak's apprentices in the past. The puzzle involved floating shapes that moved when touched in certain sequences. The shapes glowed differently depending on the order they were activated, and the correct sequence opened a map to a nearby star system. Leela stared at the floating shapes, trying to make sense of them. She wanted to apply the logic she had learned from the Ravak's guides, but it all felt too rigid. Her mind raced, and she remembered a lesson from her human education. Sometimes the solution comes from thinking differently, not just following rules. She reached out and touched one shape at random. Nothing happened. Another shape. Then she tried a combination she had never considered, guided by instinct rather than logic. The shapes pulsed and shifted, rearranging themselves until the map unfolded perfectly in the center of the chamber. The council members fell silent, then a soft murmur passed through them. Rathan's eyes widened slightly. He gave her the smallest nod, a gesture of approval by Ravak's standards. "You have done something unusual," he said. "But it works. Humans are unpredictable yet effective." Leela smiled nervously. For the first time, she felt like her age and inexperience were not disadvantages. Her uniqueness, the very things that made her young, had allowed her to succeed. The day continued with a series of challenges, each more difficult than the last. Leela had to navigate a simulation of a Ravak city, guide a holographic transport system, and interpret alien gestures to prevent a virtual disaster. Each task tested her in ways she had never imagined. She failed more times than she succeeded, but with each mistake, she learned something new. Her confidence grew, slowly but steadily. One of the most interesting moments came when a minor disagreement broke out among the council members. They were debating a trade agreement between two distant star systems, and the discussion became tense. Leela noticed a small detail that no one else seemed to see. One of the star systems had a hidden resource that would make the agreement unfair. She raised her hand, heart pounding. "Excuse me," she said, "but if we adjust the trade route slightly, both systems will benefit equally. Otherwise, one may gain more than the other." The council members paused. They did not always take human suggestions seriously, but Leela's idea was simple, clear, and fair. Slowly, they considered it, then nodded in agreement. Rathan gave her a subtle look of approval, a rare smile flickering across his face. By the end of the day, Leela was exhausted. Her muscles ached from standing and moving in ways she was not used to. Her mind buzzed from solving one problem after another, and her heart felt heavy with the weight of responsibility. Yet, she also felt exhilarated. For the first time, she believed she could truly make a difference. As she walked back to her quarters with Rathan, she glanced out at the city again. Floating platforms glimmered, and distant lights twinkled like stars. Despite the fear, the exhaustion, and the constant pressure, she felt alive in a way she had never felt before. "You did well today," Rathan said. "You are still young and you will make mistakes, but remember this, humans have qualities we cannot predict. Sometimes those qualities are exactly what is needed." Leela nodded, feeling warmth at his words. She realized that while the Ravaks were powerful, intelligent, and disciplined, humans had something unique: instinct, courage, and the ability to see possibilities that others could not. Perhaps being too young was not a limitation at all. That night, Leela could not sleep. She lay in her small quarters, watching the twin moons rise over the crystalline mountains. Thoughts raced through her mind. The puzzles she had solved, the mistakes she had made, the lessons she had learned. She thought about the galaxy beyond, full of stars, planets, and life she had yet to encounter. Nimbus, her tiny cat, mewed softly from his habitat. Leela smiled and stroked his fur, feeling a sense of companionship in the strange, alien world. She had never imagined that her cat would accompany her on such a journey, yet even this small connection reminded her of home, of the life she was protecting even as she embraced adventure. By morning, she felt renewed. A new challenge awaited, and she was ready. The council would test her in ways she could not predict. Rogue factions might try to disrupt negotiations. Unknown dangers lurked in the vast galaxy, but Leela had learned something essential. She could adapt, think creatively, and act boldly. That was her strength, and it was more powerful than she had ever imagined. The Ravak city was waking as she prepared to meet Rathan again. Platforms floated, energy currents shimmered, and life moved in ways both beautiful and strange. Leela took a deep breath and stepped outside, feeling the cool air on her skin. She felt small, yes, but she also felt capable. She was young, untested, and perhaps unpredictable, and that, she realized, might be exactly what the universe needed. The first trials had been survived. The adventure was only beginning, and the story of a 19-year-old human in a galaxy of towering, ancient beings was just starting to unfold. And as Leela walked alongside Rathan, through a city that glowed with possibilities, she whispered to herself, "I may be too young to handle this, but I'm not too young to try." The morning light spilled across the Ravak city, painting the crystalline buildings in shades of violet and gold. Leela Starling stood on her balcony, sipping a small cup of synthesized tea, her mind racing. The council had been impressed with her yesterday, but today promised a new challenge, one that felt bigger, darker, and far more dangerous. Rathan approached silently, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the balcony floor. "There is a complication," he said. "A faction within the Ravak seeks to disrupt our peace talks. They call themselves the Shadari, and they believe humans cannot be trusted. They may act soon." Leela's heart skipped. She had expected challenges from puzzles, protocol, and negotiations, but sabotage. She had barely learned to navigate the council chambers, and now she was being told she might have to face an enemy. She swallowed hard, trying not to show fear. "What do they want?" she asked, her voice steady despite the nerves twisting inside her. "They want to prevent the council from forming a trade and peace agreement with nearby star systems," Rathan explained. "They will use stealth technology, drones, and misdirection. You must assist me in countering them." Leela blinked. Assist him? She had no military experience. She had no combat training. She was 19, and the idea of facing a covert alien threat made her stomach twist. Yet beneath the fear, a spark of determination ignited. She had survived strange cities, impossible puzzles, and alien scrutiny. Surely she could handle this. The first step was reconnaissance. Leela and Rathan boarded a sleek craft capable of silent flight. It hovered above the city, scanning for anomalies. The streets below were bustling, platforms glided gracefully, and alien citizens moved with their usual calm. Yet hidden beneath this serenity were the drones of the Shadari, tiny and nearly invisible, each designed to disrupt council operations. Leela's eyes widened as Rathan explained their movements. "These drones are programmed to mimic ordinary devices. They are small but dangerous. Humans may perceive unpredictability, but you must act quickly and decisively." Leela swallowed. She had to act quickly and decisively. The words repeated in her mind like a mantra. She had never dealt with anything like this. Her training had been mostly academic, logic, diplomacy, and puzzles, but now she had to improvise in real time. The first encounter came sooner than expected. A drone zipped toward a nearby council platform, invisible to everyone except their sensors. Rathan signaled, but the response was too slow. Leela's instincts kicked in. She grabbed a nearby energy net launcher aimed at the drone and fired. The net expanded midair, capturing the drone perfectly. Rathan's eyes narrowed, then widened slightly in approval. Impressive. Humans do act unpredictably, yet with effectiveness. Leela felt a small surge of pride, but there was no time to linger. More drones appeared, faster and more cunning. Some zipped along power lines, others hovered in the sky, each programmed to disrupt, distract, or sabotage. Leela coordinated with Rathun, calling out positions, improvising traps, and using the environment to her advantage. Her human creativity became their secret weapon. She noticed patterns the Ravaks did not. Drones tended to avoid reflective surfaces. They hesitated near certain frequencies of sound. Using her multi-tool and some of the shuttle's equipment, she rigged simple traps that caused drones to collide or fall harmlessly to the ground. By midday, the immediate threat had been neutralized, but Leela knew this was only the beginning. The Shadari would not stop. She and Rathun returned to the council chambers to report their success. The council members, initially skeptical, now looked at her with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "You see what I mean?" Rathun whispered as they entered. "Her unpredictability is our advantage." Leela smiled faintly, still catching her breath. She was exhausted, but she felt a sense of purpose she had never known. The council listened to her account, asked questions she had prepared for instinctively, and began to plan their next steps. Later, Leela was tasked with a critical role, infiltrating a Shadari supply depot. The council needed intelligence about the rogue faction, and her size, speed, and ingenuity made her ideal for the mission. She would go alone, relying on her wits to gather information and avoid detection. She prepared carefully, packing her tools and small gadgets. Nimbus, safely tucked in a portable habitat, watched as she left. Leela knelt and stroked his fur. "Stay safe, little buddy," she whispered. "I'll be back." The journey to the supply depot took her through dense forests of bioluminescent plants and over floating cliffs. Her shuttle moved silently, avoiding patrols and sensor arrays. Every step felt like a puzzle, every movement a test. When she arrived, she scanned the area carefully. The depot was heavily guarded with drones hovering and sentries patrolling. Leela thought fast. She remembered a trick from her childhood, something humans often did to solve problems creatively: distraction. She rigged a small device that emitted shifting light patterns, causing the drones to follow it. Using shadows and cover, she slipped inside the depot, heart pounding. Inside, she found crates labeled with alien symbols. Some contained weapons, others contained data cores that likely held plans for sabotage. She carefully scanned the information, copying critical details to her portable device. Every step required patience, caution, and ingenuity. Suddenly, a patrol entered the room. Leela froze. The alien's senses were far more acute than hers, and if she was detected, she could be trapped or captured. Her mind raced. She noticed a ventilation shaft overhead. Timing her movements perfectly, she leapt and slid into the shaft, barely escaping notice. Leela crawled silently through the narrow tunnel, her heart pounding, every muscle tense. She emerged outside, the data secure. She felt a rush of triumph. Humans could be underestimated, but here, her youth, creativity, and courage had made the impossible possible. She returned to the council with the information. The data revealed a planned attack on the council chambers in 2 days. Leela and Rathun worked together to prepare defenses. She suggested using environmental features, floating platforms, reflective surfaces, and sound pulses to disrupt the Shadari drones. The Ravaks, who had relied on strict logic, initially doubted her ideas. Yet when implemented, the plan worked flawlessly. The attack came at dawn. Drones swarmed the council chambers, but Leela's strategy neutralized them before they could cause real harm. Council members watched in awe as the small human orchestrated a defense that even the most experienced Ravak strategists had overlooked. Rathun, standing beside her, finally spoke aloud in admiration. "Humans are fragile in form, yet they possess qualities that surpass even our long lifespans and experience. Your courage, intuition, and creativity saved the council. You are remarkable." Leela's cheeks flushed. She was exhausted, her body aching, but the praise filled her with a warmth she had never known. For the first time, she truly felt she belonged, not as a naive apprentice, but as a critical member of the galaxy's most important negotiations. The council formally recognized her contribution. Her youth, once considered a limitation, was now celebrated as a strength. The Shadari had been driven back, their plans foiled, and the council's work could continue. Leela learned that being underestimated by others could be a powerful advantage if she embraced her human qualities instead of fearing them. That evening, Leela returned to her quarters, reflecting on the day. Every mistake she had made, every challenge she had faced had taught her something essential. Humans could achieve extraordinary things, not through raw power, but through ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. She realized that even though she was only 19, she had already made a difference in a galaxy far bigger than herself. Nimbus purred as she stroked him, her small companion reminding her of home and the life she was protecting. Leela smiled, feeling both humble and proud. The galaxy was full of dangers, mysteries, and unknown beings, but she now understood that even a young human could rise to meet them. Leela looked out over the glowing city one more time. The sky was filled with stars and floating islands, a reminder of how vast and unpredictable the universe could be. Yet she no longer felt small. She was young, yes, but that youth had become her strength. The unpredictable, creative, and courageous qualities of humans, herselves, were what could shape the galaxy. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Leela Starling was ready. The Shadari threat had been only the first test. More trials awaited, but she had learned something crucial. Being human, even young and inexperienced, was not a weakness. It was a weapon, a key to solving problems no one else could. And as she drifted into a deep sleep, Nimbus curling against her side, Leela knew that her journey was only beginning. The galaxy was waiting, and she was ready to meet it, one unpredictable, courageous, and brilliant step at a time. The city of the Ravaks shimmered in the early morning light, glowing in colors that Leela Starling still found impossible to name. After the Shadari attack had been thwarted, the council had called an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps. Leela had expected rest, a chance to recover from her exhausting mission, but Rathan reminded her that her work was far from over. "You have done well against the Shadari," he said as they walked along a floating bridge above the luminous streets. "But their influence is only part of the challenge. The council itself is divided. Some members still question your presence here, human or not. Diplomacy will be your next battlefield." Leela's stomach tightened. She had never thought diplomacy could feel as dangerous as an alien drone attack. Yet she knew he was right. Success in strategy alone was not enough. She had to navigate politics, earn trust, and convince beings far older, wiser, and more experienced than herself that humans could be valuable allies. The council chamber was quiet when she entered. The members sat in their towering seats, their expressions as unreadable as ever. Some regarded her with polite curiosity, others with skepticism. Leela took a deep breath and reminded herself, humans had a way of thinking differently, of seeing solutions where others saw only problems. That perspective would be her strength. Rathan led her to a central platform where she was expected to speak. She scanned the room, noting subtle gestures and the flow of conversation. While she had learned their language, understanding the nuances, the pauses, the shifts in tone, the tiny hand movements, was an entirely different skill. She reminded herself of her victories so far, the puzzle, the drones, the creative strategies. Humans were adaptable, and she had already proven that. She stepped forward. "Esteemed council members," she began, her voice clear but respectful, "I understand that humans may seem young, impulsive, and unpredictable, but sometimes these qualities allow us to find solutions where others cannot." A soft murmur passed through the room. One of the elder Ravaks leaned forward, eyes glinting with skepticism. "And you expect us to trust that your inexperience will not endanger the peace we have worked for centuries to achieve?" Leela nodded. "I do not ask for blind trust, I ask for openness. Let me show you that humans can be allies, that our perspective can be a tool, not a weakness. The Shadari threat demonstrated what we can do when we work together." The room fell silent. She had expected hostility, and perhaps she had received it, but she also saw hesitation, the spark of curiosity in the eyes of some council members. Leela pressed on. "We can prevent future attacks, not just react to them. Humans are creative, we think differently. We notice things others overlook. I know I am young, but I promise my youth will be used as a strength, not a liability." Rathan's eyes softened slightly. He gave her a small nod, a rare sign of approval. Leela's words had planted a seed. She could feel it, a change in perception, however subtle. Humans were beginning to be seen not as a liability, but as a new kind of partner. The council discussed trade agreements next, and Leela noticed discrepancies in their plans, small details that could create imbalance between star systems. Using her human perspective, she suggested adjustments. Some members resisted, citing tradition and long-standing procedures. Others considered her points thoughtfully. Slowly, her ideas were incorporated. By the end of the session, she had influenced a significant portion of the agreements without overstepping. Afterward, Rathan spoke to her privately. "You are learning quickly. Not just in strategy, but in understanding them. Humans have the advantage of intuition and empathy. These are rare qualities among us Ravaks. You are using them well." Leela smiled, though her exhaustion was evident. "I still feel unprepared. I keep worrying I'll make a mistake that ruins everything." "Mistakes are part of learning," Rathan replied. "But you have shown that even mistakes can lead to new understanding. You are still young. That is your strength if you embrace it." The next challenge came sooner than expected. Reports indicated that the Shadari had moved to manipulate public opinion across Ravak's cities. Using holographic projections and rumors, they spread fear, trying to undermine confidence in the council's decisions. Leela knew that logic alone would not be enough to counter this. They needed to act in ways that addressed emotion and perception. She devised a plan to engage the citizens directly. Using human techniques she had studied in her history classes, public speaking, storytelling, and demonstrations, she coordinated a citywide presentation showing how the council's agreements would benefit everyone. She highlighted successes from the thwarted Shadari attacks, using simple visual demonstrations to show citizens the value of cooperation. The presentation was risky. Many council members doubted that a human could influence public perception. Yet as Leela spoke, moving among holographic projections, pointing out details and answering questions, she noticed something remarkable. The citizens were listening. They were curious, engaged, and beginning to trust her insights. Her creativity, her humanity, and her courage were connecting where logic alone had failed. By the end of the day, the council noted the success. Public confidence had grown, and support for the agreements increased significantly. Leela felt a surge of pride, but also the familiar weight of responsibility. Every action she took affected not just herself, but an entire civilization. She was young, but her choices mattered. That night, she and Rathan walked through the floating gardens outside the council chambers. The bioluminescent plants swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting a soft glow over the paths. Leela took a deep breath, reflecting on all that had happened. "You have done more than I expected," Rathan said. "You have proven that humans can achieve remarkable things when they combine courage, intuition, and creativity. You have not only protected us, but also guided us." Leela smiled softly. "I still feel like I'm learning every day. There is so much I don't understand about your people, your ways, your history. I'm still too young to handle all of this." Rathan's expression softened. "Perhaps, but being too young does not mean being powerless. You have already changed how we see humans, and you have strengthened our alliances. That is no small achievement." The following days were filled with even greater challenges. The Shadari attempted smaller, more targeted attacks, trying to disrupt negotiations through sabotage and misinformation. Leela's human creativity and quick thinking continued to play a crucial role. She improvised solutions, using her instincts to anticipate threats and coordinate defenses. Each success reinforced the council's trust in her, slowly transforming skepticism into respect. During one particularly tense moment, the Shadari attempted to disrupt a critical council vote by hacking holographic records. Leela noticed a minor anomaly in the data flow, a pattern no Ravaks had detected. Acting quickly, she isolated the corrupted records, restored the correct information, and ensured the vote proceeded fairly. The council members were stunned. A human, barely out of childhood, had saved the day through careful observation and intuition. Rathan placed a hand on her shoulder afterward. "You continue to surprise me. Humans are underestimated far too often. Your youth, your courage, your creativity, these are gifts. You are teaching us more than we could have imagined." For the first time, Leela realized the truth in his words. She had feared being too young, too inexperienced, too small to make a difference. Yet every challenge she faced, every problem she solved, proved otherwise. Being young did not limit her. It gave her perspective, energy, and a willingness to act boldly when others hesitated. The council formally acknowledged her contributions. Her role as a liaison ambassador had grown beyond expectation. She was no longer just a human observer. She was a participant, a problem solver, and a bridge between worlds. Leela had learned to trust herself, to embrace her unique qualities, and to act decisively even in the face of uncertainty. One evening, as she watched the twin moons rise over the glowing city, she reflected on how far she had come. She had faced drones, political tension, sabotage, and skepticism. She had made mistakes, learned, and grown stronger with each challenge. Her journey was far from over, but she now understood that her youth, her humanity, and her creativity were not weaknesses, they were her greatest strengths. Nimbus purred softly beside her, a comforting reminder of home. Leela stroked his fur, feeling a sense of peace. The galaxy was vast, full of challenges, mysteries, and dangers, but she had learned that even a young human could rise to meet them. She was ready to face whatever came next, confident in her abilities and the unique power of being human. The stars above the city shimmered like diamonds, and Leela knew the adventure was far from over. She had proven herself once, twice, and now a third time. Whatever trials awaited, she would meet them head-on, guided by courage, intuition, and the remarkable qualities that made her human. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for the first time, Leela Starling felt truly prepared. She was still young, still learning, still full of mistakes to make, but she was capable. And in the vast, unpredictable universe, that was all she needed. The city of the Ravaks glowed softly beneath the twin suns as Leela Starling prepared for what might be the most important day of her life. The Shadari faction had grown more desperate, and intelligence suggested they planned one final, coordinated attempt to disrupt the Council's negotiations. This time, it wasn't just drones or misinformation. They intended to sabotage the very treaty that could bring peace to multiple star systems. Leela felt her chest tighten. She was only 19, yet the weight of an entire galaxy's future rested in part on her shoulders. She looked at Nimbus curled up in his portable habitat. "We've come this far," she whispered. "We can't stop now." Rathan approached silently, his usual calm demeanor betraying only a slight tension in his shoulders. "This is the culmination," he said. "The Council relies on both strategy and courage. Humans have proven their worth before, Leela. Today, we must do it again." The morning was crisp, the air tingling with energy as delegates from nearby systems arrived. Floating platforms carried representatives above the council chambers, while the city's citizens watched from a safe distance. Leela felt the familiar rush of nerves and excitement. She reminded herself of every challenge she had faced so far, the drones, the puzzles, the political tension. She had survived, and each obstacle had taught her something vital about herself and her human nature. The first sign of trouble came just as the council session began. Sensors detected unusual energy fluctuations in the outer platforms. Leela's eyes widened as she realized what it meant. Shadari operatives were attempting a direct attack on the treaty holograms. The projections that illustrated the terms of the agreements could be corrupted, altering data and potentially destroying the negotiations. Rathan turned to her. "You must act. You are the only one who can respond quickly enough to prevent disaster." Leela swallowed hard. Her mind raced. She had no combat training, no advanced tactical programming, yet she trusted her instincts and creativity. She scanned the environment, noting reflective surfaces, energy conduits, and structural weaknesses. In her mind, she began to build a plan, a way to protect the projections and neutralize the Shadari interference without causing panic. The attack began suddenly. Small, sleek Shadari craft zipped through the air, invisible to most eyes but detected by the city's sensors. They fired pulses at the treaty holograms, attempting to scramble the data. Leela acted instantly. Using a combination of portable energy shields and strategically placed reflective panels, she redirected the pulses harmlessly away from the projections. The council members gasped as she moved swiftly, adjusting the defenses in real time. Rathan watched closely, occasionally signaling, but it was Leela's intuition that made the difference. She anticipated patterns the Shadari had not considered, improvising as their attacks evolved. Her youth, once considered a liability, allowed her to think differently, unbound by decades of rigid logic that constrained even the most experienced Ravaks strategists. For the next hour, the battle continued. Leela dodged, adjusted, and improvised. Each move was critical. One mistake could have destroyed the treaty and endangered countless lives. Yet her courage never wavered. Her human creativity shone in the face of danger, turning the tide of the attack. The Shadari, frustrated by their inability to predict her actions, began to retreat. Finally, the city's defenses, coordinated with Leela's guidance, neutralized the last of the Shadari operatives. The council chamber erupted in silence, followed by murmurs of astonishment. Leela stood, breathing heavily, her heart pounding as she watched the council members absorb what had just happened. Rathan approached, his usual calm smile touching his face. "You have done it." Once again, humans have demonstrated qualities that even centuries of experience cannot replace. Courage, creativity, intuition, these are your weapons and you wield them well. Leela felt a wave of relief and pride. She had faced her fears, acted decisively, and protected not only the council but the peace of multiple star systems. Her youth, her human unpredictability, had been the key to success. The council formally addressed her achievements. Delegates stood, acknowledging her contributions to the defense, diplomacy, and overall success of the treaty. Some spoke in the Ravak's language, others in universal translators, but all recognized a single truth. The 19-year-old human had changed the course of history. "You have exceeded expectations," one elder said, voice deep and resonant. "Your presence has shown that humans, though young and inexperienced by our standards, bring unique strengths to this galaxy. Courage, empathy, and creativity are qualities we cannot overlook." Leela blushed but held her head high. She had feared she was too young, too small, too inexperienced. But now she understood that her humanity was her greatest power. It was her ability to act boldly, to see solutions others missed, and to inspire trust and confidence even among beings who had lived for centuries. The next few hours were filled with the finalization of the treaty. Leela assisted in interpreting, adjusting details, and ensuring that the agreements were fair and enforceable. Her perspective proved invaluable. She noticed imbalances and suggested compromises that the Ravaks had overlooked. Even Rathan, who had guided her every step, admitted that her insight had strengthened the treaty far beyond what he had anticipated. By the end of the day, the treaty was signed. Holographic projections displayed the agreements in all their detail, and representatives from multiple star systems celebrated the historic moment. Leela stood beside Rathan, exhausted but elated. The galaxy had changed because a young human had dared to step forward, act decisively, and trust her instincts. Later, as the sun set over the floating city, Leela reflected on her journey. She had arrived here as a nervous, inexperienced 19-year-old, unsure if she could handle even the simplest tasks. She had faced drones, political tension, sabotage, and skepticism. She had made mistakes, learned, and grown stronger with each challenge. She looked at Rathan, who watched the city silently. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said softly. "You underestimate yourself," he replied. "It was not guidance that saved the treaty. It was your courage, your ingenuity, and your willingness to act. Humans are remarkable for exactly these qualities. You have proven that youth is not weakness. It is potential, power, and sometimes even wisdom." Leela smiled. For the first time, she truly believed it. She had been too young, too inexperienced, and yet she had made a difference. Not because she had knowledge or skill beyond anyone else, but because she had embraced what made her human: creativity, intuition, and courage. That night, she wandered the floating gardens, Nimbus nestled in her arms. The city glittered beneath the twin moons, peaceful and alive. Citizens moved about freely, unaware of the near disaster averted by one young human's bravery. Leela felt a profound sense of accomplishment, but also humility. She had learned that even the smallest actions, guided by courage and creativity, could ripple across the galaxy. Rathan joined her, and for the first time he laughed softly, a sound rare among the Ravaks. "Do you realize what you have done?" he asked. "Humans are young, yes, but in your hands, youth has become a strength that even we cannot fully understand." Leela chuckled, feeling both relief and pride. "I guess being too young to handle this doesn't mean I'm powerless," she said. "It just means I have to use what I have." "You have used it well," Rathan said. "Better than most would at any age." The following days were filled with celebration, recognition, and reflection. Leela was honored by the council and the citizens of the Ravaks. Delegates from other star systems sought her advice and insight. She met beings from across the galaxy, all intrigued by this young human who had shaped events with courage and creativity. Despite the accolades, Leela remained humble. She understood that she had been lucky, yes, but also prepared, observant, and willing to act when it mattered. Her mistakes had taught her lessons, and her successes had shown her potential. She had faced challenges greater than she had ever imagined, and she had survived. More than survived, she had thrived. One evening, as she sat on a balcony overlooking the city, Nimbus curled in her lap, she realized how far she had come. The nervous, inexperienced girl who had arrived weeks ago was gone. In her place was someone capable, confident, and ready for whatever the galaxy could throw at her. The stars above glimmered like diamonds, reflecting the endless possibilities of the universe. Leela understood that the adventure was far from over. She had proven herself once, twice, and now again in the most critical moment. Yet she also knew that life, the galaxy, and even diplomacy could bring new challenges at any time. Still, she felt ready. She had courage, creativity, and humanity on her side. She had learned that being human, imperfect, young, and sometimes unpredictable, was not a weakness but a power, and she would carry that understanding wherever her journey took her next. As she watched the twin moons rise over the crystalline city, Leela whispered to herself, "I may be young, but I'm not too young to make a difference. Not anymore." With that thought, she stood, ready for whatever the galaxy had in store. The treaty had been saved, the Shadari defeated, and peace secured, for now. But Leela knew that life would continue to challenge her, and with courage, creativity, and human ingenuity, she would meet every challenge head-on. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter that night, as if acknowledging the triumph of one young human who had dared to believe in herself. Leela Starling, 19 years old, had changed the course of history. She had proven that youth was not weakness, that humanity had strengths that no logic or experience alone could replace, and that courage and creativity could alter the fate of worlds. And as she turned to head back inside, Nimbus leaping onto her shoulder, Leela felt a deep sense of peace. She had faced the impossible and had succeeded. She had learned, grown, and triumphed. And in that triumph, she found not just victory, but the knowledge that the universe, no matter how vast, could be shaped by one determined, creative, and courageous human.